Wild Waysides, the show opening this Saturday at the Whitewater Gallery, Main Street, North Bay.
Ultimately, the point is to ignite conversations around ecology and around queer ecology, sort of decentering the idea. It's a very colonial lens that you look through when you talk about sort of man versus nature, right? There's this very long, sort of tired history of that separation between humans and the rest of nature. And so we wanted to sort of bring that back together. When you look through many Indigenous lenses, it's like it's always been there, right?
What are the details for people who are curious?
So the opening is Saturday the 11th. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. Bring your festive spirit, and you'll see the work of all of these 16 artists. Many of them have multiple pieces in the exhibition.
We'll direct people to the website. Find the website, Whitewater Gallery, or Facebook page, because I saw the events up there too, and get all the details. But the show's up for a month, or?
It's up until March 15th.
Perfect. Everybody, welcome to Richard Fortin Presents. I am so happy to be starting 2025 out in a way that, is getting my fighting juices going. As I was telling our dear guests today, I just finished watching the famous Jordan Peterson and Pierre Poilievre interview. We'll come back to that maybe, and those topics maybe a little later. But I'd like to introduce you, of course, to my guest today, James Fowler, who you may know from an interview 1 or 2 years ago now.
A few years back, yeah.
A few years back, you were here doing a great show in the hallways at 176. And Pearl Van Geest, who is here for the first time.
Yes.
Thanks for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's really fun to have you, and I can't wait to talk about Wild Waysides, the show opening this Saturday at the Whitewater Gallery, Main Street, North Bay. Tell me a little bit about this project and how it came about. Maybe we'll start with yourself.
It's been a 2-year evolution. It started, James and I were on a Broken Forest tour with Dermot Wilson, and we had gone to Temagami as part of it. Broken Forest is an international group of artists concerned with forests and environmental issues. So we were touring around Northern Ontario, and we were thinking it would be great to have a queer residency, because James had been at the intergenerational queer residency in at Gibraltar Point. So we were talking to a couple of the other people that were with us, Terre Chartrand and Jean-Marc Raymond, and we were thinking it would be great to do that. So we were working and talking about it, and we had plans and Google Docs and the whole thing. And then Dermot was up in Temagami and talking to Doug Adams, who has North Bay Paradise Lodge, and wanted to sell it. And Dermot's like, it'd be great if a bunch of artists bought it. It's right in the water, right in the edge of the town of Temagami, great location, and we could have an art residency. So he's put it out to the whole group. So we went up there and talked to him. And we thought, okay, we'll merge the two together. We'll merge Queer Up North with the White Bear Artist International Residency. So it kind of evolved from there. And so we've been working with the Nipissing Region Curatorial Collective to do that. So it just kind of was really great. It sort of came together kind of in the spirit of queer ecologies, right? All these different things coming together to make something really interesting. So we just got the ball rolling.
This is quite a collaboration. I saw how many names on the show you guys are working on.
There's 16 artists. Yes,
16 artists, and you guys are curating this. You're bringing it together.
Collaboration with Throbbing Rose Collective, with the Broken Forest Collective, with the Nipissing Region Curatorial Collective, and now with the Temagami, the Amber Newsy, and it's just been really a thing that's been evolving. And
so what brings it together? Why are these 16 artists? What are they? What's the point?
What's the point? I think ultimately the point is to ignite conversations around ecology and around queer ecology. So sort of decentering the idea, it's a very colonial lens that you look through when you talk about sort of, we'll say, man versus nature, right? There's this very long, sort of tired history of that separation between humans and the rest of nature. And so we wanted to sort of bring that back together. When you look through many Indigenous lenses, it's like it's always been there, right? You know, we always knew that. And sort of the colonialist folk are like, oh, okay, well, we're discovering that now. Kate Sandilands put together a book, a collection of essays in 2011 called Queer Ecologies, and some of the writers in that book sort of presenting these ideas, but also not just that separation between or bringing human together with nature in a sort of this a sort of a singular ecology or biosphere or whatever, but also this separation that we have or this distinction that we have, particularly as human beings, that like heterosexist couples, like that's how we procreate and that's how things are. And often when you look through theological lenses, there's this ideology that, you know, it's an abomination to be queer. And so if you actually look at nature and the way nature reproduces, and if you look at, there's some great essays in this book about instances of mammals being like queerness among mammals, particularly things like swans, how like swans will, female swans will be a couple and one will go off and have children with a male, but then after the children they're gone, the empty nesters, they'll go back to their female partner, which is really interesting. And so this presenting these ideas around queer ecology that if you look at human beings, if queerness didn't exist among humans, that would be very abnormal amongst mammals. And so it's sort of, I think in some ways it normalizes these sort of conversations. And so we, part of Throbbing Rose Collective's mandate was to sort of bring sort of queer performance and visual art programming during various festivals. We had it in Toronto for 5 years from 2014 to 2019. Of course, the pandemic shuts a lot of stuff down. So we came back, and many of the artists that we had worked with during the festival run, we thought, let's try something different. Let's do this residency program. And so we brought 16 artists up to Temagami for 2 weeks in August this past in 2024. And then from there, we started making art, and we went out on all kinds of hikes. We had a number of people that came to do talks. And also one of the things that happens, I think one of the important things that happened for this particular group was that often queer people, we had talked about this, I think, a little bit the last time we met, was that queer people will leave rural places and flock to city centers for safety because there's a culture there that they can kind of find like-minded people, whatever. But then taking those same queer people and bringing them back into rural environments, and that like things like Doug's place up in Temagami, the idea of the cabin becomes this sort of last gateway between civilization and the wilds. And so we brought these queer people from the urban center to rural places, and then from these rural places sort of let them go out and explore the wilds, right? The idea behind Wild Waysides, I don't know, Pearl, if you wanted to talk about how we came up with that title, because I think that's really important too.
We always had wild in the title, and the whole idea of like everybody belongs in the so-called wild, right? Like as James was saying, like kind of getting rid of that division between like human and nature and wild and culture, all those kind of binaries. But so we always had wild in the title. Then James found this book on Ontario flowers, and the subtitle was Wayside Flowers. So we thought somehow the wayside was so apropos a word and so poignant because, we were kind of on the margins, that liminal space, like even where Doug's place is, like there's the town and then, facing the lake, you just like take a little canoe or boat ride and you're in the forest.
You don't see people anymore.
Yeah, and people were gathering, like some of the artists were going down the road and literally gathering the wayside flowers in doing their work. So it just fit right in. And with that whole idea of like kind of seeing a kind of different perspective from that like wayside. And then the subtitle is Queer Ecologies, in reference to Kate Sandilands' book and the whole Queer Ecologies in plural. And then the new natural part of it's just a little cheeky. Like we're like, kind of like, yeah, we're, the new mode or the new natural. And hopefully, because it fits in with environmental justice too. Like if there's not that separation between human and nature, and that, the rest of the world is here for our taking and our exploitation, then, that really changes how, we perceive resources and how we perceive, a lot of different things. So it feeds back into the stuff we were talking about earlier, like green politics and those issues.
There's a interesting, again, about the word waysides, how when you talk about any sort of marginalized group, right? They sit in the waysides. They sit in the side of the road, and not in the center, not in the main transit space. And so to take these queer people from urban to rural spaces into these wayside, into these liminal spaces, I think there was a lot of and there was a lot of sort of synergy and just working together on different projects.
How about surprise? Was there any surprise?
Absolutely. There was
That was a fundamental element. The whole idea of process, where people had some ideas of what they were doing, but kind of general things, and then very much it was what developed out of being there. And as James was referencing, the collaboration between people, like a couple of people were working with cyanotypes and anthrocytes. I think that's how you pronounce the word. Anyway, and using like natural anthrotypes. Thanks. Using natural dyes like from the milkweed and from goldenrod, and so some of the artists would share the materials with each other. We worked in this collective space, and not the basement, but the ground floor of Doug's place, in amidst all these furs and skulls, and right next door where Doug has his taxidermy place.
It was a very interesting space to put a bunch of queer people.
So there were a lot of surprises, like even opening a door and be like, oh, here's a bunch of old magazines and skulls mixed in with like rocks.
There was a whole room that had preserves in it.
All
the canned preserves that was there. So it was an interesting sort of mix that happened, and I think Pearl really hit it. When you talk about surprise, it was this spirit of collaboration, and not only were we collaborating with each other and finding a kinship with each other, but also a kinship with nature, right? Many of the artists were working with nature as part of an agent. They gave nature agency in the project. So things like light or wind or water became a crucial element.
And an integration of the work,
absolutely.
Much like you're describing with the environment, like the ecology.
How
we're part of it.
Absolutely.
We are part of it. It's not a pyramid after all, it's a circle.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Which indigenous traditions tend to understand so much better than.
And I think one of the things that was really great out of that collaboration, everybody that came to the project, they were different materials that they were using, and just out of the conversations, for example. Do you want to talk about Terry's project?
Oh yeah, that was one of the very interesting surprises. So Terry Dame is a sound artist from upstate New York. And so she had come with this laser pointer. And one of her ideas, she wanted to play with putting a mirror on a membrane and reflecting the laser off the mirror and then projecting that onto a wall or something. And so those sound waves that were created from the vibrations would be projected. So we had this disco party on the dock. And so she brought her laser and was pointing in the water and discovered, it goes into the water, but then there's the incident angle that comes back up at the same angle. And then there was all the laser, picked up all the little things that are in the water, little like plants and fish and stuff like that. And she's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I want to do the projection in the water. Yeah. And so she went out in a kayak, and that was another nice collaboration. There were other guests in the lodge and old friends of Doug's, and one of them had a kayak that they lent to Terry. So she went out with all her like gear and her all rigged up, and dropped things in the water. She made a hydrophone to collect sounds under the water. She was recording the loons, like all sorts of different things. Put these through however she does it, and then had those in this drum. So she found this old can of Doug. She got a rubber glove and put it over top as the membrane, put the mirror on top. And then one night, like the water was perfectly clear, she, did put the laser, it hit the mirror and went into the water, and it was so beautiful. Wow. And then we noticed that there was like any sort of creatures or something that went into that beam were kind of weird, interestingly.
They would glow. They would burst into light. You would see these like little things crawling through.
So I'm like, I'm going to dive in and swim through the beam. So we just did all sorts of things like that.
Which you wouldn't know at the outset, but so it's about the process.
She did, completely discovered this.
Yes, absolutely.
Experimentation is important. So that
through party.
And then on Saturday now, we, the community in North Bay, get to see some of these pieces all put together at the Whitewater Gallery.
Yes.
$1 million will buy a lot, but a focused mind will create even more. This April, join us in the heart of Costa Rica to create space for growth, renew your energy, and tap into your full potential. Using tailored strategies and frameworks, we'll guide you in staying agile, focused, and purpose-driven, helping you reconnect, gain clarity, and move forward with confidence. Book a complimentary 30-minute session with Sarah to explore how this retreat can help you energize your leadership journey. Have you been following the news these last few days?
Yes, absolutely.
Can we talk about it?
Sure.
Can we get into I want to go, I think it's cool to talk about this stuff local and we want to talk about.
Yeah.
But could we talk about the change and what's happening and how everybody's feeling right now?
Yeah.
About Canada?
It's actually really interesting that we can talk about that. But I think, you talk about it on a local level, but also, Pearl and I are doing a residency in Argentina in February.
Oh.
And they went just through an election the beginning of last year, and they have a very sort of Trump.
Their president is like this guy.
He's he's got a chainsaw and stuff, and we're kind of bracing for a conservative government in Canada, and it's like what is the group that meet every the Davos group? The G7. Like Italy's conservative. Like all of these
and
when you have a bunch of conservatives who are world leaders, that for me is scary.
I just watched Pierre Poilievre and Jordan Peterson talk for 2.5 hours. I watched it. I had to because I'm I can't not understand what they're talking about.
Right. Know thy enemy.
Know thy enemy. The problem is this. So I watched half last night. I watched the other half this morning, and I'm like, fuck. He is such a good guy. I'm not saying it's I'm anti the whole anybody. I worked for Dalton McGuinty and
you're like a pinko lefty.
Basically.
Mostly.
Basically. Shh. I'm in North Bay. Here we are. Let's go loud. But I watched this knowing a little bit about the system, knowing a lot about how parties work, because I worked for the president of the Liberal Party at the time that she was, her name was Deb Matthews. Mm-hmm. She was kind of big behind Kathleen Wynne when she ended up winning. So I was in that whole thing and learned a lot, but also wanted to get out and figure out what to do. So I'm listening to Pierre Poilievre and I literally, I'm not at all.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan Peterson, no.
And Jordan Peterson, but I do listen. I'm a straight white male. I am their guy. Right. Okay? But you're listening. Plus, I'm my dad's a capitalist. My dad's a real estate developer.
Yeah.
I'm their guys.
All those things,
right? You're their target market,
basically. So I get it, and I'm not afraid to listen to it, so I can understand.
Right, that perspective.
But then, of course, you get you listen to the point, and then you go, oh, okay, well, that's I heard, And at the end of the interview this morning, I'm in the shower, and the last question he asks is, how have you changed in the last 2.5 years since I last interviewed you? And he says, tougher. Why? What do you mean tougher? Well, now I'm emboldened because by standing up to people in the last 2 years, the corporate order, because he makes it sound like he's going to go after the corporates and all this. He says now, but really it's Trump. Trump has changed the picture so much that these guys now, they're not afraid at all. Right. That's what he's saying. I mean, we are going all in. Yeah. And you look at his approval, he's at 50% approval rating. and it's terrible, and it's negative, and it's terrible, and it's toxic, and it's like, but there's no shame. And I was listening to this Black woman talk about identity politics in the US, and what she was saying was really interesting is, you know, they're just giving white men the, like, it's okay to be a white man thing.
Right.
And it won in the US.
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to play the game. Like they're just, you know what I mean? So then you go, if the last thing he says in the interview, which was obviously Jordan Peterson is just feeding him, is I'm emboldened.
Yeah.
And the language they're using, but the problem is he is a good communicator. He's not communicating what I want to hear or align with. But even somebody who does, he is good. If you take the time to listen to the interview and not just listen to the commentary about the interview.
Right.
Unfortunately, I wasn't like, with the points I don't agree. And now I'm trying to think.
But he's communicated them well.
Damn, he's a career politician. Of course, they never talk about that. They never talk that he was elected in his early 20s, that he was the earliest cabinet minister in the Harper government, that he was... That he's the opposite of what he's saying he is, which is I'm not an insider.
Yeah.
Which is the conservative playbook, right?
But that's the game.
But he doesn't ever say, like, he has all these negative things and he has all these talking points, things that he's against, but he never says exactly how he's going to fix things, do things, except for get rid of the CBC.
Yeah, get rid of the CBC, but he says the carbon tax right away. So the green agenda out.
Those things. Yeah.
And what he's saying is we're going to become an energy powerhouse, which we have, and we shouldn't be ashamed of. So first thing is axe the tax. So right away, your price of gasoline goes down by 14 cents. Everybody's going to be happy. So the first thing he's going to do is that. The other thing is force municipalities to build. They won't get transfer payments unless they start approving building affordable housing. So like these guys are such masters of the...
Yeah, environmental, like Ford did, like all the environmental...
That's what he's saying. We're going to build that ring of fire. That ring of fire up north, whatever. So all of a sudden I'm sitting there.
You know, shorten the permissions, which means like no consultation with neighbors, no consultation for environmental concerns, all that stuff, out the window.
It's out the window.
And even proroguing Parliament, I was really disappointed to read all the bills that aren't going to be passed.
Yeah.
Like the clean water for Indigenous nations, like all those things that are now like, and they had a lot of really good legislation that they were going to pass before the next election. So that's disappointing.
Yeah. So I know now, like, there's a vacuum because now we don't know who, like, now there's going to be a whole ramp up of this in this leadership run. So hopefully, you know, there is a credible alternative but then that's a banker that'll play right into their hands.
But then maybe it'll be somebody that they can get behind. You know what I mean? Like that seems a little bit more pro-development,
but he's green. And the first thing that all the banks just did last week, if you read the business, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, all the big US banks that were all signed on to the green shift that Mark Carney was leading, they have all withdrew their membership.
But green is so environmental, like, and economic in the greater sense.
Well, that's Mark Carney's whole thing.
Yeah, because
but they're going
what the meaning of economy is.
Yeah. So now, though, what I'm saying is all that progress will be with the combination of Trump and Poilievre. Wow, what a 5 years we're in for, you know?
And Quebec, like
and
liberals,
Quebec.
like hold Quebec in the country in a way. So a party essentially from the prairies, you know, with that mentality, what's Quebec going to want to do? Right?
Well, they already did. Who's the number one party in Quebec right now in the polls?
Is it?
Separatist Party. Big time.
Oh, yes.
They've gone
yes. I thought you were going to say Poilievre. I'm like, no.
No. It's this, but the Separatists. Of course.
Yeah.
And they're like way upswing. Way. This was on a separate... I was listening to what things are happening in Quebec. Wow.
Like the separatists, like in the early 2000s, I thought were really interesting because they were more progressive. But now the separatists seem to be leaning more to the right, which is kind of disappointing. Because initially I was like, I'll move to Quebec. I'll become a Quebecois. Like, because their politics seemed so progressive and inclusive and green, and now not so much.
And it was fascinating to observe, and we're just getting started. Like in terms of this massive zeitgeist shift, I believe.
I can't believe it. I still feel hopeful that maybe.
I don't know. It's just so weird. Like I was in Texas at South by Southwest when they were doing going back on the abortion stuff. And it's just like, you can't, it's like, what? Like it's possible?
Has anyone read The Handmaid's Tale or seen the show?
Exactly. It's all there.
I think you were talking about being emboldened, going back to your point about saying that he's emboldened. It's a dog whistle to the public to also take on those attitudes. And like with the first time Trump came in, we had people just unabashedly being like openly racist, openly sexist, openly homophobic and transphobic. And so anybody who's part of any marginalized group now potentially is a target for these sort of disenfranchised straight white men who now feel that they're empowered to be openly racist and homophobic and sexist. And fortunately we do, we some people have the fortune to live in these enclaves, these sort of liberal bubbles like Toronto or something like that. And then also like in the village is the liberal bubble inside the liberal bubble. So, people there maybe have a different attitude, but then you come to a place that's like a smaller town or, outside of that bubble. And it's like, it's a very different discourse that's being had where you have all of these people who are like, yeah, finally we can say what we want. And like, I think it needs you take a step back. It's like, what do you want to say? Like, what is it that you need to say so badly? Like, how are you disenfranchised? Why? Because you have to share? And these are sort of bigger philosophical questions, but the parties that are, coming in and they're winning on these sort of populist ideologies of like, I'm going to save 14 cents on my gas. Yeah. Okay.
There goes the planet.
Yeah, there goes the planet. There goes your roads, all your infrastructure, your health care, caring about other people, Yeah. So, you're right. I think we're in for a big shift in the zeitgeist. And, I'm also interested to see like how arts and culture responds to that.
Well, this is why we're doing this podcast. Right? Because this is amazing how it all interconnects with when I did a little bit of research on what you guys are doing, what we're talking about. That's why I was wondering if we could get into that. And it looks like we got some content there. So thank you for letting us go there. And I'm sure we'll come back to it. Saturday, Whitewater Gallery. What are the details for the opening?
It's for the opening. It's Saturday, the 11th. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. Bring your festive spirit. Yes. And you'll see the work of all of these 16 artists. Many of them have multiple pieces in the exhibition. And one of the things, we've been in North Bay for the week, putting the exhibition together. And again, it's another collaboration with Pearl and I, where we're now building conversations among the artworks. Right. So like when curation is an art form unto itself where you're sort of building these conversations and building these rhythms. And like, so when you go through the exhibition, you're like, oh, that has a note, and then this has a note, and then this has a note. And you kind of really get a sense of there's a chorus that you're listening to as you move through the exhibition.
Which the process, because it was together, or parts of it together, right?
Yes, you see that.
So interesting.
Yeah, the links through them all, conceptually, visually, formally, through like the color and the lines. You really see, how things are connected. And in the space itself, we'll be there Saturday during the day too. The gallery hours are Wednesday to Saturday.
We'll direct people to the website. Find the website, Whitewater Gallery, or Facebook page, because I saw the events up there too. And get all the details. But the show's up for a month, or
it's up until March 15th.
Perfect. So there's time.
But the exhibition is touring, so we'll have it. We have a symposium here in North Bay in April, and then the exhibition travels north, and it will be then in Toronto, and we're looking at some dates also in Mississauga and in Oakville.
And Temagami.
And Temagami.
Oh, good.
So,
Yeah, bring it back.
Yeah. Well, Temagami in May, hopefully. We just had a meeting up there yesterday.
Yeah.
Great.
This was a pilot project. So what happened in Canada, there was for a time, there was a sort of intergenerational queer artist residency, but there isn't one in Canada. There is one in the US. And so as part of Throbbing Rose and trying to sort of promote and bring queer artists together, we have sort of a rolling hierarchy. So maybe 2 people want to work on a project. We have, we're 20 members strong in our core group. And so 2 people will take the lead on a particular project. John Rubino and Francisco Alvarez have really taken the lead on the festival, the Nuit Rose. But Pearl and I wanted to take the lead on Queer Up North. And so we're sort of doing that. And as a pilot project, it was a huge success. And we're now looking at hoping to making this a more regular thing, probably every 2 years.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, I know your history a little bit because we did an interview before, and I know you're from North Bay. You grew up here. You went to Toronto, and you still come back. You have family.
I do. My father's here, and I have some cousins here still.
That's great. So that's the link to the north. Now, yourself, Pearl, is there a link?
Well, I'm a big canoeist. So So in the summers, I come up north and paddle.
And where did you grow up?
Kind of all over the place. Like my parents were Dutch immigrants, grew up in St. Catharines. We moved like all over because my dad had this job at Beaver Lumber and he kept getting moved around. So I'm settled in Guelph for the time being anyway. Like I've been in Guelph longer than anywhere.
Yeah, sure. But there's a real green scene in Guelph, the market there and the farming.
It's such a green scene. And you were
Guelph is
describing
hip.
earlier the sort of the right pockets, and you don't have to go far out of Guelph to hit, those kind of like right wing attitudes. But Guelph is definitely a green pocket and a queer pocket, but it has been interesting being here. Because
this is where I'm happy you. Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Well, even like James and I went to Starbucks and we had our cards for the show, and there's a person there, Mercury. They them were like, oh, can we give you this card? And they're like, yeah. And then my partner is queer and here, and we're gonna give cards to them. And then we went to the opera.
Opera Bakery.
Opera Bakery.
Yeah.
So like, hey, can we put some of these cards down here? And we're having this show for queer ecologies, and we talked about seemed to be quite a few more queer people up here. And the person was like, well, you're looking at one. So there seemed to be a lot of queer people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very different scene than when James grew up here. I think.
Richard, you and I talked about this, about how, as a young queer person and leaving North Bay and then coming back, how I've changed and I've grown up. North Bay has also grown up, right? This actually isn't the first time Pearl and I have spent some winter time here. Pearl and I were here last February and we went ice fishing. Some locals took us out ice fishing and I caught a fish. I was pretty proud of myself.
Yeah.
So.
Anybody who doesn't follow James on TikTok, go follow him on what's the name?
More Fun with Bears.
He does great art, but really, I admire what you do there because you do share a lot. You have these artists.
The 5 Artist Friday.
5 Artist Friday. What are the other things you do? You do 5 art, but you're talking about the art world all the time. You're that guy.
Pearl and I get to work on a few great projects, and we're talking about collaboration. And you meet somebody in life, and you're like, I like you, you like me. Let's do some things together. Yeah. We get to leave to go to Buenos Aires in February. We're doing an art residency there, and then we're also going out to Pooch Cove up in the top tip of Newfoundland for June. This is also through Throbbing Rose. So, and we hope to bring some new stuff back to North Bay the next time we're around.
What's the deal with Argentina trip?
We're doing it. So Pearl and I are also members of the Redhead Gallery, which is the second longest running artist run gallery in Canada. Okay. It's been around. It's celebrating its 30th year this year. Mm-hmm. And so we are, one of the mandates of the gallery is to sort of do these sorts of exchanges. And so there's 3 of us, Pearl, myself, and Sarah Kernahan. We are going down. We were bringing the artwork of a number of the artists from the gallery there. And then in August, we have a number of Argentinian artists, and they're going to be showing in our gallery in Toronto. So,
very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to follow that adventure. Do you share anything on social, or do you
I'm
have some sort of platform?
James is my mentor.
He's the guy.
Yeah, and I actually did get a little grant that so James was helping with the social media, and I'm learning, and I have to just get out there and do it. Yeah.
Do you have socials from Provocations?
Yes. I have Instagram. And not TikTok.
Well,
yet,
we're gonna put the links here somewhere so people can follow your adventures. Thank you so much for taking time to come in and share a little bit what's coming up Saturday at the Whitewater Gallery in terms of having a party. Sounds like it's going to be a party.
It'll be good. Yes.
I'm going to go check it out. Can't wait to see it.
And even if it's closed, we have like Terry's video. James has a video that will be running even if the gallery's closed. So look in the window. There's lots of stuff to see, even if you can't actually get into the space.
That's great.
That's so cool. Usually we end with like the political stuff. We started with that. So this is really fun. Thanks again for coming in. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I can't wait to follow the project along. And thanks to Dermot for making sure this all happened.
Yes,
because he really is a little magician with his craziness, and we love him for who he is.
That's
so Dermot,
great.
Thanks for doing that. Thanks for coming in. And everybody go check this out, support it. And I'm sure we'll have you back because that was a lot of fun and there's lots to learn. And I can't wait to hear about Argentina and Newfoundland and much more.
Thanks.
Because you can't escape North Bay. Really, we
don't want to escape
Exactly.
North Bay. We love it up here.
Exactly.
The gateway to the north.
The gateway to the north. Thanks for coming in, James.
Thank you.
See you Saturday night.
See you. Bye, everybody. Talk to you soon. Subscribe, follow, love, all that stuff. Thank you. Bye.